I realize many fans are really deeply into the books and they only see the show sort of to supplement the books. So I'm giving a forewarning right now. We're going to get into what will be major revelations with Winds of Winter in the final book. And again, I'm not calling this a speculation video because as we're going to see, there's enough contextual evidence that this may be what will happen. Again, broad strokes. Again, like most people, I have no insider knowledge. So the details of what will happen in the final books, we all know, is very speculative. But now we can say broad strokes, some of the structure of books 6 and 7 will now be revealed. If you don't want to hear about that, don't listen on. All right, so let's get into it. So what is the big deal and how is Maise involved? Well, really this is a Kit story. So let's get through it very quickly. Kit said in another interview that he was pissed off he did not kill the Night King. I am not interested in the Night King controversy. We're not going to be talking about that too much. But it's what the Night King story signals for the books. That's what's important. Now, why is he pissed off? Because apparently somebody told him as early as season 3, you will kill the Night King. We're building up that story to kill the Night King. Now, that itself is not the issue, but Maise in another interview confirmed, yes, Kit was told early on, and that's why he was angry that because he was expecting to kill the Night King. So what does this mean? It means that it finally confirms what most people have suspected, that originally, and again, this is D&D, this is not George, D&D wrote that the Night King would be killed by Jon. So there is finally confirmation that that was the original idea. They did actually script it that the Night King would be killed by Jon Snow, but they changed their mind. That's not the real revelation. The real revelation is going to come because we're going to hear Dan and Dave speak, and essentially they're going to give away the whole thing. Again, I think by accident. I don't think they meant to spoil the books. But if you reason it together, we can see what's happening because in 2013, season 3 happened, but something else happened. They met with George R. Martin and had a Santa Fe meeting where they asked him, well, where are you ending up the stories, right? Because again, a lot of the books have been published, but not all of the books. And he admitted this. He has said this on record that he gave them a lot of the endings for the final characters. So we'll hear Dan and Dave speak and we can reason it together that with some new information from James Hibbert that, oh, okay, now we know what's going to happen, at least in broad strokes.
We hope to kind of avoid the expected, and Jon Snow has always been the hero, the one who's been the savior, but it just didn't seem right to us for this moment. We knew it had to be Valyrian steel. For, God, I think it's probably 3 years now or something, we've known that it was going to be Arya who delivers that fatal blow.
So we've heard Dan and Dave talk. What does this all mean? Well, they're admitting, okay, the original story, and this is George's story. That's the real revelation here. George's story was Jon will kill the Night King. Now, in the books, there is no Night King. Not at this point. Now, some people speculate that there will be a leader of the White Walkers. I'm not interested in that, and I don't think that's critical. What we need to know broadly is Jon Snow will confront the White Walker. Now, we might say, well, that's kind of obvious. But actually speaking, no. At this point, he's dead, so we don't know for a fact he's coming back. But now, if their revelation is correct, or at least they're being honest with us, Jon is coming back. Now, that might seem not much of a revelation. We all kind of know that, but we didn't know that for a fact. Now we know for a fact he is coming back. But we also know his story. He will confront the White Walkers in some way. Whether he confronts the leader, destroys the leader, maybe that's a detail. That's not really important. What's important is they have kind of accidentally revealed, yes, what we were doing in the early seasons was George's story, and we were setting up the final seasons to be, again, George's story. So when they decided to use Arya and not Jon Snow, they have admitted basically that's not George's story. George's story is the Jon Snow story. So it's like, well, wait a minute. If the Jon Snow story with the Night King is George's story, that's what's going to be in the final books. That has to be in the final books. That's logical. That has nothing to do with Dan and Dave or George Martin. That has to now be in the final book. So whether he actually confronts the Night King or some leader of the White Walkers, that's not relevant. He's going to be playing a key role in destroying the White Walkers. Okay, so that's his story. But now we need some further evidence to really lock this whole thing through. And we've gone, again, sort of by accident, in a book by James Hibbert, kind of shill book by a pro D&D writer. That's not speculation, by the way. He's very clear. He's on their side. But he does make some few revelations which I think are very, very valuable. I'm going to read a first section which is not very valuable, but we'll get into George's words, and that is very critical. So we begin with Brian Cogman, co-executive producer. He says, everything was at Winterfell in the first pilot. All the King's Landing scenes were cut from the script to save money, like Jaime and Cersei, blah, 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 blah. We don't care about that. And now this is James Hibbert saying, quote, and one of the Starks almost didn't survive the cutbacks, end quote. Now, this is George Martin. This is the bombshell. They were doing a faithful adaptation, but I knew they'd have to cut some things. The biggest thing was Dan and David called me up and had the idea of eliminating Rickon. the youngest of the Stark children, because he didn't do much in the first book. I said I had important plans for him, so they kept him. So again, Rickon, the youngest of the Stark children, because he didn't do much in the first book. I said I had important plans for him, so they kept him. So this is a lot. This is a lot going on here, and obviously the Rickon thing is a huge thing. So now we know a lot about Rickon, but we'll do something on Rickon later. What he has just admitted is that, yes, as incredible as it sounds, the TV series is actually basically faithful. Even though they changed a huge amount and changed clearly a lot of details, D&D actually did the books, which means, logically speaking, we now know the endings of the books. We know, broadly speaking, what must happen to these characters. If Jon Snow destroys the White Walkers, it's possible he's going to die afterwards. That's possible. It's possible Arya will die afterwards. But it seems pretty clear where they're going to go now. And this is George, right? This is not Dan and Dave. Arya will play a role in destroying the White Walkers, but probably, I'm guessing, she will kill Cersei. Sansa will take the North. Jon and Arya will move against Dany because Dany goes crazy. Right, we have to all take for granted Dany will go crazy. George has never confirmed this, but I think it's pretty now obvious. Daenerys going crazy and either becoming a full Hitler kind of monster, or at least just destroying too many things. They have to move against her. And we do know from the books that the Faceless Men do have an agenda against Daenerys, and Arya is working with the Faceless Men. There's still a lot of details we don't know, and obviously I'll have to do videos on this, but I think when we reason it out, it turns out those very lousy or bizarre happy endings, that's probably what will happen. The details may change. Maybe Arya will be the Queen of the North, but now we do know a lot of the Stark children will survive. They have to survive, and apparently we can guess certain twists. Maybe Bloodraven and Daenerys are working together, but what we got at the end, that is actually what we will get in the books. So if you were ever worried that, well, what if George dies and we don't get his vision of Dream of Spring? This is correct. I've pieced it together correctly. You don't have to worry. We actually do know what he intended and what the plot was and what the story was. So take it for what you will. Jon Snow will be the hero. Arya will work with the Faceless Men. Cersei will probably die, and there will be a lot of happy endings for the Stark children. And that is George's story, not Dan and Dave. They actually did at least that part of it. They were staying faithful to George. But again, we got to do more work on here and get more confirmation. But we put it together: Maise's interview, Kit's interview, the Dan and Dave revelation, and again, this thing from Fire Cannot Kill a Dragon. Yeah, we actually did get more of the books than we expected. They did betray him. I'm not contesting that, but I think the betrayal is not as complete as we think. So we actually did get a lot more of the books than you might have expected. At least that's what the evidence tells us, but we've got to be very careful how we look at it. All right, this has been GRRM Thrones Analyzed on the original plans for Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. If you like the content, please hit the like button and or subscribe. Please comment below. Please consider supporting the work on Patreon. Yeah, this is a big one, so I'm going to have to do a couple more videos to convince people. But if you wanted to know the endings of the books, you basically just now have heard it. So there you go. Fair warning.